Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our weekly tropical weather outlook video for today, Saturday, February 1st, 2025. It is the first outlook of Saturday, our first weekly update into the month of February. So now we're 1 month closer to hurricane season, and we're obviously 1 month further into the year of 2025. Let's start off the first day of February with a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies across the globe instead of just focusing in on the Western Hemisphere. This is actually still updated as of yesterday. This map with sea surface temperature anomalies by the NOAA Coral Reef Watch, it always updates a day behind, but I'm not sure if there's really much of a difference anyways. But really quickly, looking in the Atlantic, how does it look like on the first day of February? Still very warm, especially through the eastern Atlantic and into the Caribbean, and especially in the Gulf of, the Gulf, let's just say that. It remains very warm, and you can even see the loop current popping out here. So there's definitely a lot of energy and moisture in the Gulf, and this will be something very interesting to watch for severe weather season. There's also a lot of warmth throughout the Caribbean. It's really not gone away, and that's also very interesting as well. The Caribbean has been pretty solidly above normal throughout the entire winter. We haven't had, I guess these cold fronts have not made it all the way down, that they brought cold air into the Caribbean and cooled off the sea surface temperatures there, but they definitely did cool things off in the Gulf a little bit, although now it's starting to warm back up and things still remain cold off the East Coast. As I've said, lots of cold air, and as you probably noticed, there was a lot of cold air throughout the United States in January. Probably didn't make its way all the way down into the Caribbean, but there was a lot of cold air throughout January in the United States. In fact, it was, I think, the 8th coldest January, or one of the coldest Januaries since the 1980s in the United States, completely. So it definitely was a cold month this month, and you could definitely see it with the sea surface temperatures along the coast, and it'll be very interesting to see how this month shapes up, looking very volatile right now in terms of United States weather, but we'll go over that in just a moment. ENSO wise, along the equatorial Pacific, that also remains cold as well. We're still in a La Nina pattern, and you can even see some of this cold kind of building back just several weeks ago, if you remember, especially in the eastern Pacific. Things were kind of on the warmer side. Looks like trades have once again strengthened, and now we're seeing, I guess, another minor fluctuation with this La Nina, but for now it remains in place. And also off the Baja, in the eastern Pacific, things are also kind of cold too, and this is a little bit of an interesting pattern as well, because this has to do with sea surface temperatures in the tropics. And this is something else that we'll be watching when it comes to sea surface temperatures and how that correlates to hurricane season. But for now, still, even though we're into the first month of the first day of February, I keep on saying first month. We're no longer in the first month. We're now in the second month of the year, first day of the month. We're still at the very beginning of February, and we still have just over 100 days to go till hurricane season comes. So not really focusing, especially in terms of sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic, we're not focusing too much on that yet. But I do want to mention La Nina. We still, once again, remain in a somewhat persistent La Nina pattern. The latest value from the sea surface temperature anomaly plots is around negative 0.8 degrees Celsius below normal, and this is within the equatorial Pacific, at least in the Nino 3.4 region, which is where we measure ENSO. And yeah, we've kind of had some of these fluctuations. We went up and down a little bit, and we kind of went up a little bit over the last several weeks. Now it seems like we're kind of dipping back down. But overall, La Nina has remained persistent. We could even see this with the T-depth anomalies in the equatorial Pacific, basically a measure of all of the sea surface temperature anomalies in depth instead of right along the surface. And you could see a very persistent cold pool still remains. We've kind of had a little, and as you can see, especially if you look at the top right, we had a little bit of warmth in the Eastern Pacific, as evidenced just a few weeks ago. But look at that; it's all now completely eroded, and we now have a very thick cold pool just below the surface in the equatorial Pacific. So this probably means that the La Nina in place right now will probably be able to sustain itself for a few months. But then notice back off to the west, we have some building warmth, and it'll be very interesting to see how much this warmth builds and moves eastward, if it does at all, and eventually does it chip away at this cold pool, and we eventually see ENSO warm. But for now, I would assume probably a reason as to why we're starting to see more cold in the equatorial Pacific, or at least La Nina holding for now. Just look at the SOI index, and you could see, at least in the 30-day average, it's kind of gone back up again. The latest daily contribution to the SOI, definitely you can see why La Nina is holding on for now. The daily contribution, positive 25. So that means very strong pressure pattern, which favors strong trades in the Pacific, which in turn favors more of a La Nina atmospheric pattern. Let's actually look at the daily contributions over the last several days. Look at this. All strong positives. So this definitely means, for now at least, La Nina is going to remain in the Pacific. The 30-day average is definitely going back up, and the 90-day average holds strong in the positives at 6 points positive. And you can see that with the trade winds too. This is the zonal wind anomalies. And if you're not familiar with how this map works, this is pretty much the longitude lines, 180 degrees obviously being the date line. So think of this at least, or at least this section of the map, think of this as the Pacific, and then this kind of y-axis is the dates. The dates above this line being the dates in the past, and below is the future. So this is a forecast. You can kind of see how it looked like in the past, and you can see what at least is being forecasted for the future. I think this map uses the GFS model. And in the Pacific, what do you notice, as at least for the forecast into the future over the next several days, as at least we get into the early part of February, you notice a bunch of these blues and purples that denotes stronger trade winds in the Pacific, and obviously that would help at least sustain whatever La Nina pattern we have right now, currently, or at least currently in the short term, as in the next several weeks. So obviously by now we've kind of, I've probably, given the basis, or we have established, that's what I was looking for, that La Nina is definitely here to stay for now. How about if we take it longer term over the next several months? And now this is where the climate models come in, and we're actually going to do this at the start of every month, since this is the first day of the month, and this is the CFS model for today. This is the forecast over the next several months, goes at least right now up to October. So I'm going to save this, and then we'll bring this up once again come the beginning of next month, March, and we'll see how the CFS fares then, to kind of see a comparison between what they show now and maybe what they show next month, to kind of get an idea to see if anything has changed at all. So let's lay that out. And then let's talk about what the CFS shows for right now. And you can see, very interestingly enough, we see a warming up. We see La Nina at least persistent for now, at least for maybe the next month or so. And then by the time we get to spring, at least we see a little bit of a warming up as we head into the summer. We get towards ENSO neutral, and we also start to get on the warmer side, but we don't get overwhelmingly to the warmer side of the scale, or at least any of the plots above the 0 degrees Celsius line, meaning that we do warm up gradually, at least as we head into the summer, July to October. So this roughly through here, this spacing through here, this would be where hurricane season is. We do warm up some, but we don't warm up too much and we don't warm up dramatically, and especially we don't get above zero point 0.5 degrees Celsius on the positive side of the scale, which would generally mean we're heading towards El Nino. So the CFS kind of sees a gradual warming of the ENSO, and of course, going back to the map here, the Atlantic, on the other hand, is very warm. So if we have a warm Atlantic and we only have a gradually warming ENSO, nothing over dramatic, maybe that'll be an interesting setup we have for hurricane season. And then really quickly, before we move on, let's take a look at another climate model, the CANCIPS, which actually came out for February today. This is the February run of the CANCIPS, and let's really quickly move this out in time. La Nina generally weakens, although kind of remains for a little bit as we head into the spring months, kind of tries to warm up as we head towards next month, and then once again, things cool back down. And then as we head into the summer and then into the fall, you could see the Pacific trying to warm up, doesn't really go full-blown El Nino, pretty much basically like the CFS, where we gradually warm up, but we don't go anywhere extreme. And then as we take it out to the end of the year, I guess we get somewhat towards El Nino as we get towards next year, although this is a full year out, so I wouldn't really trust the CANCIPS then. But the bottom line, as I'm trying to say, as we head towards the spring and into the summer, some warming of the ENSO occurs in the Pacific, but not anything overwhelmingly. And then meanwhile, if you look at the Atlantic, on the other hand, man, does the CANCIPS make it warm. Not sure, though. The CANCIPS, especially with these climate models, this is a full 5-6 months out. So I wouldn't trust it. I wouldn't put full stock into it. But you could generally see an underlying pattern, at least if you look between the two models. Both of them kind of show a gradual warming of the ENSO. And we don't go extreme. Because obviously the big thing will be, do we go to an extreme side of ENSO on either end? Do we go potentially, now the models are showing warming up towards neutral, but maybe we instead end up taking a huge dive into a strong La Nina, and on the opposite hand, we somehow end up in a strong El Nino. Neither of the models do that. They kind of keep it neutral as we head into the spring and summer. And that'll definitely be something we'll watch very closely over the next several weeks, especially now that we're in the month of February. We're only 1 month away from meteorological spring, and especially once we get into spring, ENSO will be something very important we watch for hurricane season. But besides that, there's nothing really much else we can do when it comes to the tropics. So let's move on to United States weather to kind of close it out. Not much is happening, at least as of the latest watches and warnings map across the United States. The East remains very quiet for now. I think we had some severe weather this week across the South, but other than that, nothing much else. The West is actually pretty active right now, especially in the mountains. Winter storm and winter weather advisories in effect across portions of the mountain west. And also some flood watches in effect too. Lots of moisture, and this is probably where a lot of the weather action will be for a good portion of this week. Will be in the western part of the United States. Much needed, especially for portions of California, which obviously dealt with the wildfires over the last several weeks. So let's look at the models, at least look at the GFS, take it out into time over the next day or so. And yeah, you could see low pressure develops in the west, lots of moisture, probably rain along the coast, and then you could see snow as well, probably for these higher elevations. Persists through the rest of the weekend into early next week. And then you could see, I guess, it's kind of an atmospheric river setup that occurs over the west. Probably brings rain as well to maybe portions of central northern California. Maybe San Francisco, Bay Area getting a lot of rain. And then snow, of course, throughout the entire, at least northwest, through portions of Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and even the northern California mountains as well. And then some of that rain makes it further south, and then we kind of have, this is now towards the end of the week, low pressure comes into the West Coast. It definitely looks like a pretty substantial system. Maybe some gusty winds, definitely heavy rain, and it extends pretty far down the coast too. Maybe hopefully we can get some of that rain in Southern California. I'm sure they'll want it, but especially across the northern part of the state, more rain and then more snow for the mountain areas, and then of course across the Pacific Northwest that remains the case too. And then this low pressure kind of slides east, and we get some snow across the northern plains to end out the week. And then I think in the eastern part of the United States, we kind of have a low pressure that develops mid to late week, and it does seem to bring some snow to parts of the Northeast, although nothing significant. So let's just really quickly run it back. Let's go just overall, let's play the next several days. Nothing significant really seems to happen, except once again, the West remains active with precipitation. And then I guess as we get beyond a week, we have a pretty substantial low pressure that develops. This might be a system to watch, and it does look like a pretty significant setup for winter weather in the Northeast. But that is what is that? 7-8 days out. Not going to put too much stock into it. But overall, at least over the next week or so, things should generally be on the quieter side. And as for temperatures, especially if you did not enjoy the cold throughout January, at least if we run the model over the next week or so, it does seem pretty warm, especially across portions of the South. You're going to have your late January, early February thaw. And then as you can see, obviously in the Pacific Northwest, where things remain on the cold side, as evident by looking at the model, lots of rain and snow across portions of the Northwest U.S. mountains, which will be over the next several weeks. Besides that, nothing much else happening. And nothing much else happening with the tropics. Obviously, we have most of the rest of this month, and then we have March, and then April is when really the tropics will get interesting when it comes to hurricane season talk. And that's when we'll really dive into what to expect for this hurricane season. But for now, still, as we head into February, we are 1 month closer to the hurricane season, but we're still generally just looking at ENSO. And of course, casually peeking at the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic. Beyond that, there's really not much else we could do, but it'll definitely get interesting over the next several weeks as we head towards spring, and eventually, in a few months, although I know it'll definitely fly by quickly, we'll be in hurricane season. With that being said, thanks for watching for today's video. For this week's video, if you're new to my channel, would really, really appreciate it if you like, comment, subscribe, share with your family and friends if you found this video informative. Share to anybody you know, anybody you think will get any good information out of this video. I would really appreciate it. Help us grow the base. Why not? Can't do it alone. We obviously need a lot of people, so would encourage, if you found this video and you're new, to subscribe and maybe reach out to others and tell them to subscribe as well. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all, and we will talk again very soon.